Let's do it.
So, welcome all of you lovely participants. This is one of the most awaited webinars we've been having for the last 2 weeks. Lots of people have been raising a lot of interest regarding this topic. Lots of people called us and they were sharing their opinions and on more on the topic of what we need to talk. So I think we are going to have a really good session, and we have some amazing people join today. So I am the co-founder of ReadMe and also the director of Founder Institute. Amazing session is awaiting us, and I would love to introduce my co-host Jehan, who is from IgniterSpace. They're doing some amazing work back there, and I would ask him to introduce our panel as well. Jehan.
Thanks, Enosh. Thanks for that lovely introduction. So we have with us some amazing individuals. So we have firstly Malithi Jayatissa. She's a directress at Leeds International Schools. We have with us Harshana Perera, who is the principal at Asian International School. We have with us Nuwan Dissanayaka. He is the founder of the Sri Lanka Democratic Education Community. And of course, we have with us Buddhika Pathiraja, who is currently the principal of Alethea International School. So thanks a lot for joining us here today, guys. It's an absolute pleasure to have all of you here. All right, so we're going to dive right in with the questions, because we've been having, as Enosh said, a lot of anticipation for this event. We've been already, there have been a lot of pre-asked questions as well. I think education is a topic which is of a very big interest to all of us, because as we know, because of what's happening with the pandemic, education has been hit pretty badly. And a lot of changes have happened in the way that we educate kids. So we thought together to bring forward this amazing set of people to share some thoughts on how education has changed, and hopefully look into the topic of what kind of changes the education system can have in the near future. So I'm going to jump right in with a question, and this question goes to our principal at AIS, Harshana. So Harshana, with the sudden change in the situation due to COVID, schools were, I think, forced to take the education online suddenly. So what are your thoughts on the practicality of this online education? Do you see this being used in the future as well beyond this point? So Harshana, if you can share some thoughts on that.
Thanks, Jehan. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this webinar. And I have been working with IgniterSpace for over 3 years now. And it's really my privilege to be associated with you as you organize this to brainstorm on the way forward for online education in particular. Yeah, well, as you would all imagine, schools were taken quite by surprise with the outbreak of this virus. And naturally, we had to respond very fast once it became clear that there was no chance of schools reopening in the foreseeable future. So I think whether you're talking of a state school in Sri Lanka, private school or international school in Sri Lanka, all schools have resorted to some form of distance education from about the period soon after the new year. And I'm sure it has been very successfully employed in most places. And the degrees to which it has been rolled out and the nature of delivery might change, but by and large, everyone has relied on technology to make teaching and learning possible at a time when physical contact is not possible and children are not able to go to school. So I think as educators, we are all very grateful that we have this technology. I mean, few years ago, for instance, if this happened 10 years ago, I'm pretty certain most of us would have been at a loss as to what we would do. Because even if you look at 30-40 years back, when schools had to be closed in Sri Lanka for prolonged periods due to civil unrest, there were attempts of building up study packs and delivering those study packs. But in a scenario where social contact was not possible, and even the postal system had collapsed, there would not have been any way of actually managing this situation if not for technology. So I think all schools, educators, management, teachers are grateful that we had this technology to do this. Of course, my personal opinion is that it is not fair to compare what is delivered on a distance mode through online teaching and what a student would actually get by coming to school. As much as we are very, very thankful for technology for enabling this delivery, it is also not the same as what it would be. So therefore, I'm sure my other colleagues will discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages or the pitfalls and shortcomings and all that. But I think what we must understand is, given the present scenario, there couldn't have been a better option than what we are having now, either enabled through Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams and a gamut of such solutions which have been made available. Now, the real question that you asked me was, do I see a way forward, and is there scope for this form of teaching in the future?
Yep.
My answer to that is yes, but not as a substitute to real life students coming to school, right? So where the yes comes in is, certainly there is a lot of compatibility that can be achieved with regard to combining online education with the physical space.
Yeah, collaborating on that.
Particularly in a context like Sri Lanka, where traveling from place to place takes time, even a short distance, due to congested traffic. Maybe we can look at a model where all that cannot be squeezed into a normal working day in school can be supplemented with additional work coming online, and perhaps working extra hours, which might obviously be a necessity in order to catch up, particularly for exam classes, after we get back to a semblance of norms. The second, and perhaps the more important aspect that I see to this, is that it can actually be a good model for creating more parity in our resources and sharing of resources. We all know that there is a big rush to the big schools. There is a big rush to the cities, and particularly the Western province when it comes to gaining education, right? Whether it be trying to enter the best of public schools or best of international schools. And all these schools have constraints of capacity, right? So now here you have an opportunity where the teaching resources of the best and the teaching resources of the brightest can actually be delivered to many in one shot all across the country. For instance, our teachers are now teaching 75 students at once.
Yep.
Now that you would never imagine in a school setting. In a regular school setting, it doesn't exceed 25. But here they are delivering to 75. So when you upscale that, it is possible for teacher human resources, valuable human resources, to gain access to the far corners of Sri Lanka. So therefore, even a student in a distant place can still benefit. So that's where I see that this has a lot of scope for the future.
Absolutely, with technology acting as an enabler and with them collaborating with the norms of education, we can make it more accessible. Enosh, I think we can look at it at a different scope.
Definitely. And I see a bright blue shiny guitar at the background of Harshana. Looks amazing. You play the guitar.
Well, I'm not a guitarist, but okay. That's my son's guitar, and he plays the guitar. But I'm afraid I do not play any musical instrument.
So my next question, actually, I would like to direct it to Buddhika. And what I would like to ask is, I mean, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that schools are not just about books, and there is far beyond the books, especially kindergarten to K-12. So in your perspective, I mean, elaborating more on what we spoke earlier, what are your thoughts on that?
Jehan and Enosh, thank you again for inviting me. And I think this is a very privileged panel as well. We don't have the hardships of, beyond Colombo, the parents who are, struggling. But I would like to take just 1 second to thank all the teachers across the country who have struggled, but learned a lot of things online overnight and started teaching, using technology. I think we need to have all those teachers who struggle. Yes, I did say that schools are not just about books, because right now we are delivering online what can be delivered, what is already on the books, basically. Beyond that, in a school, we have lots more, which involves a lot more skill-based things that we need our children to know. They need to have a value system. They need to be good people when they actually leave school. So do that come from books? I sincerely doubt it. It is the social skills. It's how they become emotionally intelligent and how they actually manage day to day that will decide whether they are good people at the end of the school career. So how do we get that across to the children? It's definitely not a technical relationship. It's ups and downs, it's experiences, what they learn through. They learn how to make mistakes, how to bounce back, how to, be respectful. Actually currently in this country, we're talking about rehabilitation, we're talking about coherence, we're talking about a lot of things that I think we can necessarily incorporate and highlight that schools are the backbones of those particular qualities when it comes to, adults. They need to learn those things when they're younger. So definitely schools are not just about books. There's a lot more that goes with education, especially K-12 education. I'm not talking about, universities. So yes, the extracurricular activities, the relationships that they have with teachers, the friends, the peers, the interaction, all of that bring about skills that are much needed in the society.
And definitely, I think what you mentioned as the backbone, the schools are being the backbone. I think that we are definitely going to dive into that because there's a lot to discuss. Jehan?
I think on a different...
You didn't ask Buddhika about the piano in the background.
Yes.
That's good.
As long as you don't ask me to play, yes.
A post-event encore session.
Absolutely. So my question is basically when we consider the syllabus alone, is this what we consider as the education? Is it just the syllabus, or is there more to it? Especially what might consider life skills and learning at home. So maybe Malithi, if you would like to comment on that.
Hello again, like everyone, I think it's a great privilege to be with you all today at this webinar. I agree with almost everything that Mr. Harshana and Mrs. Buddhika has said so far. So looking at schools, I think curriculum also when it comes to it, it differs sometimes from school to school, but at the heart of it centrally, almost all the general basic skills and capabilities are being attended to by every curriculum, I think, if you look at the schools. So from schools also there's a lot of expectation now where all the different capabilities and skills that a child requires to be delivered solely from the school. So with the curriculums, with the I think it's the exam-based curriculum that we are having mostly in Sri Lanka. So with that also, schools are trying their level best to, I think, make many things available to students through extracurriculars and through different other activities that the schools organize. So I hope that these things go a long way in enabling the children to face their futures once they leave school.
Absolutely. I think especially with regard to the syllabus, it's mostly okay. How do you apply the things that we learn at school and add some value in terms of the life skills? Nuwan, I remember when we were having a chat, you were mentioning about localization of education. I think this is an area that you were very passionate about. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Thank you very much, Jehan and Enosh, for inviting me for this panel. So actually, the idea of localization means now we are talking about a pandemic. So we have to expect this pandemic will remain in the country for in the world for next 2 years. Obviously, when you have a pandemic in the next 2 years, the problem what we are going to have here is, if you take in Colombo, so you can find some students who are traveling from Kegor daily to Colombo just to attend the school. So in such situations, so if you leave the education system like this, what will happen if another outbreak comes? So we we can, like, if you check the statistics shows that the kids are less likely to show the symptoms of this virus. So what will happen if the one students get the virus? So we know that we have congested, compact schools. We are like 8,000 to 5,000 students are like in a single place. So what will happen? It might make the situation worse. So the localization of the education means what we are going to do is we have to have a national platform for national online platform for education. So at the moment, what we have textbooks. So if we can convert, we have plenty of resources, we have plenty of people, we have ICTA, the very more energetic people are there. We can build a national online education platform. Then what we are going to do is we can distribute it into the areas all around the country, and then what we can do is we can take the students in that area into that centers. We are going to conduct the education. It might be a school, it might be a center, technological center, or anything. So then what will happen when we can continue the process of education? And another thing what will happen here is the students will have free time. Now some of our panelists were talking about huge time they are spending on the road. So we are going to talk about human hours. So if we can save that human hours, I think education will be more interesting, and it will be go to the each and every edge of the country. So, and without making a risk, if there's a situation, if there's another outbreak, so we know that in a given area, students are located only in that area. So if you take in your area, so if in Colombo, if you know the certain area, those students, they have never left the area without any reason. So what we can do is we can handle the situation easily, and we can control in any case of future threats in the coming future. Okay, I think I explained it. So if you have more doubts, questions.
Would any of you like to comment on that particular idea of localization in terms of the practicality of it? Buddhika, maybe you would like to comment on that?
Definitely. Only thing right now, okay, we'll just look at current problems. We're in Colombo. We have taken the lessons online, but if you sort of summarize the problems that we've come across, we have parents who have just one smartphone at home, which goes with them to work and comes back. So there's no device during daytime of any sort for the children to even access the internet, forget online learning. So device issues are there. Then connectivity, internet connectivity is another issue, so we had so many parents asking, okay, what do? We can't connect. And then there are power cuts and, bad weather. So many things put together. There's a lot, okay, leaving aside power cuts and, God-given reasons like bad weather. When it comes to devices, it's something that we can do something about. I don't know. So basically, it is a lot of funds. We're talking about a lot of money. And if there was a collaboration between the government and, any sort of private institute, there can be some sort of, a possibility which we can devise methods to reach these children beyond Colombo, it's a heartbreaking situation where you have the teachers able to go online, but the children can't get online to connect. And like Harshana said, back in the day, late 80s, we were not in school for almost 2 terms. And I remember we had study packs, raw papers coming in the mail, but we never knew whether they were marked or what happened to them eventually. But times have changed. Within the last few years, technology has pushed us so much further. But as a country, are we there to, are we capable of getting our children online at least? Forget a complicated device. So Nuwan, I think, yes, it's a fantastic idea, but how do we bridge that gap first? I think we need a bit more input from a body that is able to help the situation. We can suggest, but the practicality is as limited as that.
Great, thanks, Buddhika. Nuwan, I also wanted to ask from you. So this is something that there's a lot of debate around this, especially after this COVID pandemic came upon us. Basically, the idea of learning, right? Learning not being like a snapshot in time where it's a definite. It's not a definite, where it's actually a continual thing, especially when it comes to the new requirements and new demands of the new world and the new jobs, new industries. Learning has to be continual. How exactly do we get the schools and our education institutes and this sector to rethink this entire process, and what exactly needs to go into that?
Right, it's a very good question. Actually, like if you like, now we are talking about a pandemic situation at the moment, and if you go to grade 4 they have textbooks for environmental studies, and you for the I think there was like in the 54th page, I can't remember, but it's there, how to act in an influenza virus spreading. They talk about washing hands frequently, and they are talking about covering your nose when you're like sneezing. All the instructions were given, but the problem is now, even though we can see that in Sri Lanka, so the situation got worse, and even around the world. So we can see that situation goes worse because of malpractice, like lack of the knowledge on this situation. Because the reason is, even those are in the textbook, it doesn't goes to them. So what we have to do is we have to always think about the restructuring the education, because at the moment what education what we are practicing, so I can experience from myself. So one thing is like most of the things what we are like studying, that's only for the exam. So beyond that, we don't use it. So practical applications are not there. Also, you know that I know that Jehan and yourself, you are like entrepreneurs, but you know that in our education curriculum, there's nothing called like, there's a small book called entrepreneurship, but they don't focus students to become entrepreneurs. So that's one which is lacking here. So the reason is we don't want to produce people who works under someone, because we can't keep on producing it. Because if you want to go ahead in the world, like in the global economy, so we have to produce new things. That's how the country should move upward. So obviously we have to change the way of like the way of studying, because we have to go from the theoretical knowledge for real life skills. And I would like to like give that one answer for what Buddhika brought up. So she asked like, do we have enough facilities? Yes, there's a problem about the facilities. But what we can do is like for small levels, actually, even we have textbooks, as Malithi suggested, actually in that textbook, there are only few skills. One is like first aid, what is the process of life, what is how the animals are working. So those life skills, we can give them at home. So I did like, before coming to, I did like small online survey. So actually 70% of the students, which I had the survey, they were not happy with the current education system they had. They were asking for the life skills, and I asked from what are the things you learn within these few months when you're at home. So the most of the answers, some of them were learning languages, some of them were learning like how to play new games, and some of them are learning how to build new things. Some of them have learned farming. So some of the students, they have grown like different vegetables at their home. So they are learning skills. And when you come to the K-12 section, that means advanced level, we have enough facility. If you take like, I spoke to one of my colleagues, I think she's also in the webinar now, 2 days back. She said like one of her friends work in Vidata centers. It's a technological centers around the country, and we have IgniterSpace, 1,000 centers by ICTA, and we have technology laboratories, and we have schools, and they say that they have enough facilities within the village, but they are not being used. So students who does not have those facilities, we can let them to the centers because it's in the area. So the problem is when the situation break up, if we know that what is the area which is there, we can lock that area and we can find the solution, and we can continue running the rest of the country. That's what we have to maintain. We can't stop the economy. We have to keep on running the economy and the education process, all the things, while we are solving a problem in a given specific area. That's the main thing of localization of education.
I mean,
Thank you very much.
Very rightly said. And with your point of, while we are talking about continual learning, there is also this something that I would like to ask Buddhika. I mean, soon after this curfew and lockdown happened, people went on social media and talking about public exams, and all based around these exams. I mean, when
I
we are
think we
looking,
have some questions from the audience as well
yeah,
regarding exams.
especially regarding exams, because that has been quite a debated topic on social media. So, I mean, when we look at countries like Singapore, which has abolished exams, and they are rethinking education and moving more towards discussions, homework, and quizzes. What exactly should we be doing as Sri Lanka? Should we still keep hugging the idea of exams?
Absolutely not. The saddest, and I think I need to agree with Nuwan when he said about children learning for a very short-term goal. It's called surface learning. They're learning simply to pass a quiz or a test in a very quick duration. Then you have strategic learners who are targeting an A star or an A, again, very, very exam focused. And soon as you finish the exam, most of the content is forgotten. What we need is deep learning. And deep learning does not happen unless children actually enjoy what they do. They need to learn at their pace. And do we have that time available in our school system for children to actually enjoy learning what they're learning? And to build on that, do we have the teachers skilled enough to make sure that children enjoy what they're learning? So before we go into the exams and how it is happening in Sri Lanka, if you look at the rest of the world, it's high time we actually looked at education systems and brought in good things that we can actually incorporate. Why the private sector schools are doing really well is partly because we have acknowledged and we have brought in some of the features. And like you mentioned, Singapore is one country that actually did away with grades. They don't have class physicians, they don't have class averages. They have actually done away last year only. I think they got into it big time where grade 1 and 2, they actually did away with all sorts of quantitative measurements. They're going on qualitative descriptors to make sure that the children are competent. So this is now, if you look at the indexes that are available for us to measure Sri Lanka against, we have the World Happiness Index, we have the World Economic Forum declaring, okay, these are the trending skills. And based on that, we have Cambridge EdXL, adjusting their curriculum and putting forward so many different things, BTech, you have all these things backed by research. But currently, Sri Lanka, we are not measuring our system against what the world requires. I'm not talking about 50, 60 years. The World Economic Forum decided, okay, the trending skills for 2022 has analytical thinking, critical thinking, originality. We're talking about skills that cannot be achieved simply by dictating what is in the textbook, making sure they answer the questions on an exam paper, and there's no deep learning. And if you look at the other system, the Japanese system is fantastic. The Finland, I know Nuwan can probably talk a lot about the Finland education system where children start schooling at 7. They don't even go to school at 5. So that freedom of choice, that leisurely learning has a lot to do with how children actually enjoy learning. And that is deep learning. And deep learning helps us to think. We wonder, we are more curious. We're not just mechanically precision memory is not a skill that is required these days. And actually, if you look at the World Economic Forum, they actually list out the declining skills as well, as much as they list out the trending skills. So endurance and precision memory is a declining skill. Manual dexterity is a declining skill. But we are hell-bent and focused on public exams, which actually push our children to memorize. And they're not remembering.
That's actually a really great point. I think when it comes to self-exploratory learning by themselves, using their hands-on skills, especially these days since they're at home, we see kids moving out from the classroom-based learning and trying out home-based learning. There's a lot of content available, a lot of videos and things being shared. So Malithi, do you really think that through home-based learning we can address certain aspects of education that a child needs? Do you think that schools may go into the extremes of maybe I don't know, allocating 1 day per month for home-based learning? Do you see aspects of home-based learning that can be valuable to a child, which essentially is a little bit harder to gain through school-based learning?
Well, because I think the silver lining of this pandemic that came through has been kind of the awareness to raise our awareness about the available technological platforms and the different things that are there to kind of further ourselves from what we are doing now. And I think the change is here to stay. So definitely, even once schools open, these technological platforms will still be there. And now I think into school strategic planning also, this will always be a part, because earlier we didn't have to focus on training and preparing people in case during school vacation we suddenly need to deliver a lesson or something to be online and tech savvy. But now I think for distance learning, or when maybe a child is sick, if they want to have access to content, or share resources if we are having a difficulty at any time. So this online education will open those doors and give more access to things that were not available before at one place. But still for all, with the 5 days and in our countries, with the 7:30 to 1:30 frame that we have to teach children, I don't think with the curriculum that we are catering, we actually have enough time to reduce from that. Because most of the other countries have lengthier times. If you look at the school times, it's generally like 9 to 3, and some other countries still go on to do from even 7 to 5, like China and all. But generally in our schools, these periods are allocated, I think, in a traditional manner, 30-35 minutes, and all that, mainly based on curriculum facilitation with other extracurricular things, extracurriculars and co-curriculars. So online platforms will definitely be used, especially I think more than in school education, in the higher education, where people will definitely prefer, I think, to study from home rather than traveling and spending time on road any longer. But in schools, for the peer interaction and the other various skills that you gain, that you cannot just do alone at home, coming to school and interacting with others during that window will still be very beneficial for a child, rather than just staying at home and all this screen time. And there are, as much as there are benefits, there are also other negatives with these systems too. And like Buddhika said, because majority of the people in our country, they are, I think, still struggling to have all the resources that are needed to engage well in this virtual classroom. So whatever the basic platforms, because when you look at the schools, I think based on whatever has been available during this time, schools have tried somehow or the other to do the best possible by their students using various means. But even now we hear sometimes parents have not even heard that the schools have done it after sending messages, giving calls, various other means. There are some parents who say, I never knew that that had been available and we didn't use it so far. So these technological improvements will have to come, I think, nationwide for us to go real online for anything in the long run. But with this change, people have taken it on stride, and in whatever the capacity, I think, learned something new.
And you mentioned about technology. I think we will also come to that, another interesting area for us to debate on. But another thing that you also mentioned is about curriculum. Now, talking about curriculum, I think most of us, especially after we got into lockdown, we had time to go and update our LinkedIn profiles and put all the skills and courses that we did. And that brings us to a topic of looking at education as a portfolio. Like, what are the skills that you have? What are the experiences that you have gained? And if the jobs of tomorrow demands that we have a mix of skills and expertise to carry them, shouldn't we be looking at education also the same way? Why are we hell-bent on just following some age-old system which is already put there and maybe not even again, debatable, but is it actually adding value? Your thoughts, maybe, Nuwan.
Thank you
Can
very
I
much.
chip in? Sorry, carry on, Nuwan. You go first.
Okay. Thank you very much. So now we are talking about like actually like what should be the education. That means you are talking about the credentials, right? I'm just clarifying. So you are talking about more than credentials. We need.
Again, I think that itself is a debate. See, when you say again, depending on whether we look at this as accredited credentials or what we just gain as experience itself. So I think that's like a thin gray line that we need to figure out ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you a small story. In 2015, I had one of the student like who's like highly energetic, highly passionate. So I just motivate. I know that I can get huge things out from this student. So I just keep on motivating him for 2 consecutive years. 2015, he sit for the National Advanced Level Examination, and he was the island third. His rank was island third. Now, if you call him now, he's still in medical faculty, second year students. So he has almost 4 more years to come to the real life. So that means we are talking about we are wasting. So our credentials, the credited credential system is not a problem. But the problem is you are keeping, that like for a young person, young individual, the best time is from age 18 to age 24. And if you put them in somewhere, and if you do not use their energy and you ask them to use your energy to memorize these things, to write them in exam, so what we are going to do is we are going to waste our youth. That's the one thing we are going to have. I think it's better to let them come to the world and learn from the skills. They can follow their degrees. That's of course that's fine, because if they have extra potential, they can go for the degrees. But you have to take them into the workforce as soon as possible, because when they have the energy and passionate about things, they will invent new things. If you ask them to follow a given structured path for 6 or 7 years continuously, then what will happen? Obviously, their creativity will die. So for an example, they have done a research. If you want to find the creativity of a child, the best age is age of 10. So when I have done some activities with age of 10 students, they are so creative. And if you let them to follow the path of our education, the normal education system, what will happen? When it comes to grade 11, they are not creative at all. They just memorize the marking schemes. That's the situation. So obviously we have to focus on skills. We have to have credited credentials, but with that we should let them learn, let them execute their ideas and come up with new ideas and innovations.
Of course. Harshana, you had something to mention on that too.
No, it was actually based on what Enosh was sort of trying to broach as to what are the kind of skills that we are looking for as the end result of education. I think most of us would have heard of this whole concept of the 21st century skills of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. So if we look at those 4 C's, which have been hacked to a significant extent by many, I think one salient feature of that is that education has to be a community-based activity. It cannot be an individual sort of reclusive exercise. So that is why I am firmly of the opinion that the way forward for online teaching is really as a supplement to school-based education and not as a substitute. Right? I personally don't think that it will ever be a substitute to a child coming to school, because apart from what a child learns from a teacher, there is so much that a child learns from each other, or there's so much that children learn from each other. So your emotional skills, your social skills, your ability to get on with people, respond, all those things will have to be developed only in a real life scenario and not in a virtual scenario. I think we've got to be very, very clear on that. And the flip side to what we are talking is, my concern is that if we lose out on the contact for, let's say, 6 months or 8 months, or as Nuwan says, maybe for 2 years, there is going to be or bound to be a huge problem that we are going to have to deal with, where we may have covered our syllabuses, where we may have delivered the content, but we may not necessarily have brought out the end product that is envisaged through all that process of learning. And this is where now parents will have to step in, or parents will have to step up, because we've heard of this guru deguru sambandha. So many, in many contexts, I'm talking of the context that I have been used to. Educating a child had been outsourced to the schools, and the teachers and the parents have effectively washed their hands off getting involved in it, on the basis that it's the school's job to bring up the children. Yes, it is the school's job, but we must not forget that it works in a triangle: the child, parent, teacher, all three. So this is an instance where the parents have now got to sort of step up in order to make sure that the moral, spiritual, and the overall, even the physical upbringing of the child is taken care of. So yes, we can develop skills such as creativity and critical thinking through an online platform, but it all beautifully gels together and comes together only in a setting where people actually know to relate to each other. So therefore, as much as we can build community, and for instance, children wouldn't have been able to communicate at all if not for them being on Microsoft Teams or Zoom class or even a WhatsApp group, right? So there is limited, there is the possibility and the ability to do that, but that is still limited. Let us not forget that it is still limited because it's not the real thing. So the clear line has to be drawn between what is real and what is virtual.
Absolutely.
So what I foresee for the future is that the virtual has to support the real, where the real is unable to go very far.
That's a really valuable point. And as you all know, like in terms of the education for the past couple of decades, we've been looking at a very compartmentalized approach, where we separate subjects. History is taught separately from maths and so forth. So when we compare to education systems, which we talk about in like Finland, where kids are taught in a more scenario-based atmosphere, where they can actually easily apply what they learn in school in the real world. How do you guys as educators see this sort of loosening up of the compartments of the different subjects taught separately versus more scenario-based education being injected into the school curriculum? Malithi, would like to hear what you think about that, since you work with the Leeds especially works with kids all around Sri Lanka.
I think that especially because knowing the trends, knowing the norms and all, most of the education is, especially I think in private schools, because they have more freedom over decision making, try to integrate these aspects into education. So mainly, still I don't say that most of us actually have one subject where all the teachers come together and support children with learning all the different subject materials related to a concept or a scenario that they are experiencing. But we have integrated now, I think, with the collaborations with the IgniterSpace team and all, where we try to bring in different aspects of other subjects also to the things that they do. And with the different activities that we organize in our schools, we always try to bring together children of every kind, teachers who are talented in different areas, not just the subject teachers, to come together and to work, so that by actually doing it that they learn more. But because one main disadvantage that we have is, unfortunately, most of the teaching resources that we have also, they have not been trained in that way to think on a very parallel platform. So they have specialized in set subjects. and they find it very comfortable to teach what they know rather than trying to link it to all the other subjects. So I think schools and all are trying their level best, because I know especially with most of the private schools, they are investing a lot into teacher development by sending to various available new things so that teachers become aware, and they encourage to try it out in the schools at different levels. So with these things, change will happen gradually. But the big changes that we see everywhere, because there are pros and cons in everything. I strongly believe that, because even in the Western education, sometimes there are some really good things in our education system too. So
Absolutely.
just running behind one particular thing, sometimes everything what others do might not be specific or relevant to our country, our culture. So keeping everything in mind, it's high time to rethink how education system is in the country, and to try to apply this not only to a particular set of schools but to schools throughout the country. And if we can afford now, for example, taking kids to do gardening and then show the I don't know, the physics of it, the maths of it, and the life skills of it, that's great. So that I know the children will definitely enjoy more than sitting in a classroom and learning about subjects where they know when to apply what they are learning other than at exams. But unfortunately, the system has not evolved to that stage yet. So whatever we try to do, because we tried activity-based learning in our schools around 1 year back, where we try to kind of do this now, what we are doing a little bit, asking children to come prepared to the lesson, do the work on their own before the teacher teaches, and to do assignments, activities, rather than teacher teaching and trying to do those things. Yeah, there was a huge resistance from parents and students telling that now teacher is not doing much work, not giving any notes. So that mentality is still a very exam oriented mentality most of the people have it. So even if schools want to do something, sometimes that acts as a huge hindrance. But I hope there is change that we see in schools, in the education system. So every time now we don't even have to look at 10 years back. I think if you look at 2-3 years back, even from where we are, we see change happening more rapidly.
Absolutely. That's very positive to see. So
yeah. And I think with what Malithi, what you told, there is also something like a chain reaction of, because there are so many moving parts involved in this. When one happens, that as a chain reaction, next thing happens. So let's say how the parents think versus how the teachers behave versus what the school wants out of the teachers. I think it's all like interconnected, and that's something that we also need to address. But again, stemming from one of the things that you told, if you can, maybe Buddhika, I would like to ask this from you. Because you also shared something, a very interesting story earlier also. The whole thing about schools or teachers also teaching about ethics and morals. And especially if you take, since you mentioned about the Singaporean example, where in a country like that, they are looking at developing skills that the workforce actually needs, the corporates actually need, and that's the focus that they are actually going through. But when we are looking at online education right now, maybe those are the aspects that might get neglected, which probably we are not seeing that right now. What are your thoughts on it, Buddhika?
So like, I totally agree with Malithi. There are pros and cons to everything. Right now, as opposed to not having online learning, even that would be a huge disadvantage, because we'd be only talking about papers that we email to the parents who would most of the time read it and try as much as possible to get the children involved, failing which, get frustrated. Stress will probably be let out on the children. I don't think there'll be much morals in it. So we need to look at online, what we're doing right now as a positive. We're trying to make the best of what's available. Yeah. This is not a solution going forward. It can definitely be a hybrid model where we can actually give knowledge-based, not necessarily skill-based knowledge that we can impart. What we do through theoretical lessons can definitely, be replicated in an online session. But definitely morals, ethics, life skills, are a completely different, in approach. I think online may not suffice. Just like Harshana said, that there is a limit to what we can do online, and that's it. We have to acknowledge the fact that online is a good thing, but it has its limitations.
You also mentioned that story about the student who had the legs up.
Yes. So, if you want to hear it, just one teacher who, because we use Teams online, and Alethea teachers, again, a big applause for them, because they really struggled and learned most of the things overnight and came out fantastic. They had so much of struggle. Even the teachers who knew how to do online lessons never really made the effort to figure out how to do it. So COVID-19, like Malithi said, one silver lining is those who knew or not, deep end, swim or sing, and they actually had to learn. So the number of children you can get on the screen is limited. So you have maximum of 9 children, 9 faces on the screen at the same time. So the teacher actually rotates, she can see only selected children. So one child who was not on the screen had suddenly come up on screen with her legs up on the table. Small elementary teacher, an elementary, I think grade 3 or 4. So the teacher actually immediately stopped and to look here. You're learning, you're in a classroom though you're at home. And you have to put your feet down, you have to be dressed properly, you have to greet, treat everyone else with respect. So she took a bit of time and she explained, which is very important, because in a classroom that happens more often. And the skills that you gain through such incidents is to be humble enough to accept your mistakes, to know how to, bounce back from a mistake you've made, to have the courage, because it's very embarrassing when something like this, and children find it even harder to deal with it. So this lesson is again going to translate into adult life, where you learn how to live with people, create coherence, create this cohabitation, whatever it is. These are little skills, these are the starting points, where it grows into a bigger skill later on, much needed in the society now.
Yeah, and maybe this might be a bit too mundane, but see, at least that teacher had the knowledge, or maybe the expertise enough to even like scroll through the screens and then see the student who had the legs up. So my question, which I would again come back to Nuwan, is most of the time, I think even my parents included, it's that the adults who need the tech training, not the kids. And we are teaching the kids right now for them to take up jobs maybe 10, 15 years later. But what are we actually teaching? If we are talking about the 4th industrial revolution and we are equipping our kids right now to take up those jobs, again, coming back to that same thing of us, of kids, going into the workforce. If there is limitation from the teacher side or from the adult side, that they are not even, most of them are not in tune with what's happening, technology, and maybe even to the basic of not even knowing how to use a smartphone sometimes. How exactly do you see this? I mean, what needs to change? Where does it need to change?
That's a good.
Even the video, I think there was a video that you posted, I think 2 days back. This kid was using the screwdriver, and how even the screwdrivers he was holding is something new and I mean different. So I mean, those are the skills that which eventually, I mean, when kids are exposed.
Right, it's a good question. Actually, that kid is my sister's son. So we just taught him everything. Now nothing else to do. So I just gave him a screwdriver and old television. And I think he figured it out, like how to like unscrew a like nut and how to remove the parts. So within I think 10 hours like of work, so the television was separated into pieces. So they are born learners. So one thing is that. So obviously now about digital devices. Now the problem is not with the kids. The problem is with the adults. I think one of our like participants also asked the question how we can take this to teachers. So one thing is, one fact we should know that the technology cannot replace teachers, but the teachers who do technology will replace the teachers who do not. So this is another silver line of this pandemic. So somehow this pandemic made us the education to move forward. So in Sri Lanka, we were trying to shift the education movement to a digital level. But what has happened, this pandemic made it faster. So we, like as Buddhika said, that all her teachers learn how to use digital devices. So that means if you're not coping up with this, what will happen? You will be the part of the past. So one thing is obviously one thing is with this pandemic will give a demand for teachers. Now you have measurable skills. Most of the time the teachers had less condition. Obviously we know that that's the reality. So teachers, if you take in the job sector for graduate, so the least job he or she will pick is teaching. So what will happen? This happens because of the teachers measurable the skills and the output they are putting is measuring is really less. So what will happen with this one? So the measurability of the skills has improved. Whether you can do Zoom classes, whether you can make animations, can you do a PowerPoint presentation online and use a digital tablet to like write them on the board? So those types of things will be added. So as a result of that, demand for teachers will increase. With that, we will find more young adults, talented ones, young generation will enter to this profession. So obviously with that, the teaching will go to the next level. Obviously it has been forced now. Second thing is about the adults. So obviously our adults are like digital, they are immigrants, they are not digital native. So students are really like, if you take the child of a family, he or she knows almost everything about more than the parents. So one thing I believe in my classroom, if a students argue with me about a chemistry question, obviously I don't accept because I am right. But if students argue with me about the digital device, I won't accept that I am right. I accept that the students knows more than this. But one thing we have to make sure that as a parents and teachers, we should teach them digital ethics. That's the main thing. So we have to have a national digital ethics, a list of digital ethics, and we should teach them not to invade others' privacy. Those are the things we have to involve them. I think that students are natural learners. They will learn. You have to only provide them the devices with digital ethics. That's the main thing. Most of the countries, they have gone in a really in a wrong direction because of lack of digital ethics. If you teach them digital ethics, and the teachers and parents, we have to teach them digital ethics, and they should transfer into the next generation. Then the kids, they will take it forward because they are born learners. I think that answer is satisfied for you all.
You actually brought a lot of good perspectives with your experiences. Quickly, I would like to tell the participants as well. Most of you are putting the questions on the chat box. Please copy paste and put that in the Q&A because we will be taking that in about 10 minutes. We will be starting the Q&A. So maybe I'll quickly come to Harshana. So I actually do not know any other industry, I really do not know any other industry which has so many stakeholders, like the students, the teachers, the parents, the private sector, the public sector, the government. I mean, there's so much intertwined into this one industry or sector that you call it. So I mean, where does, if at all change needs to happen, where does it need to happen? How does it need to happen? I mean, could you shed some light into this? I mean, especially from your perspective as an educator, how do you see this?
Well, I think change has to come all round. I think Buddhika and Malithi captured on how much teachers have sort of embraced technology, where schools have been sort of underlying the need for it for possibly even a decade, over 2 weeks, because they were compelled to, they have sort of fully absorbed what needs to be done with technology and how it can be used as a tool. Children, the digital natives that Nuwan was talking of, now understand that there is more to it than games or videos or recreation. That there is actually a big input that can come into their lives. The state has a big role to play, obviously, because state is the biggest provider of education in this country and almost all countries. So we are all aware in a Sri Lankan context that even though much has been said about the digital or the technology drive, the penetration has been very small, and the real benefits haven't trickled to the periphery. So that needs to pick up now more than ever. Having said that, I'm aware that many schools, particularly alumni associations and all, have come forward and, you know, given devices, done all that. Other stakeholders like the telecommunication companies, for instance, need to be mindful of their civic responsibility in enabling things like the broadband problem, the data issues. So it's a all-round change, and I firmly believe that COVID is going to bring about a paradigm shift in our thinking, right? All heads of schools who shared views here paid tribute to their teachers. And I know that this has enabled parents to be actually sitting in the classroom with the kids at home. So now they really understand what a tough job the teachers do. So they are now actually appreciating a whole lot more of what the teachers do. So to answer your question, there needs to be a paradigm shift if we are to learn something out of this. You know, like the world came out of the Great Depression and the world was never the same again. I can only hope that the world will come out of this COVID lockdown scenario with new thinking. You were mentioning about how Finland is leading the way in restructuring education. What we are trying to do is really first to unlearn what we have been learning for over 200 years. The model that we use even today is industrial revolution ideology, where knowledge is compartmentalized, age profiling is compartmentalized, right? Otherwise, children, there is nothing to say that all 5-year-olds grow at the same pace. But we insist that all 5-year-olds have to go to grade 1. There is nothing to say that, you know, you can learn physics and only physics and there is no real soft skill coming out of it or spiritual value coming out, right? So we have a rich heritage where education was imparted in temples, right? And we had, you know, universities which didn't compartmentalize knowledge. The time of the Greeks, they spoke of, you know, math along with art, right? So music coupled with history. So there's a lot that can happen, but it all depends on how much we are willing to learn from this experience, right? And learning is all about adapting to change, bringing about a relatively permanent change in attitude, belief, or conduct. So our ability to learn from this episode, to take the message and the lessons from it, will define how we move forward and what kind of new world will emerge from this catastrophe.
Definitely, Harshana. And I think that was a very, very heavy answer, and probably most of our participants will find it difficult to process for some time. But it was very, very, very well rounded.
Absolutely.
You touched a lot of areas. There is, I think we have about 20 minutes to go, and let's also dive into the questions. I see that there is multiple Salomis. I think something has gone wrong with the user account. But there is a very interesting first question that I would like to maybe ask from Harshana again. Is technology is widespread in Colombo? This is from Salami. Technology is widespread in Colombo. We face challenges in the outskirts. Today, most of them in the rural area is not getting the education. How can this situation ease? Maybe to add a little bit on that, I think the demographics of Colombo is far different from maybe rural kids. So maybe the access that maybe a Colombo kids have might be far better. How exactly can a situation like this, and when we are moving into technology-based education, how can this be looked at?
Well, let's face it, we have disparities anyway, not just in technology, right? Let's say that let's not talk about technology for the moment. There are schools without science laboratories. There are schools without libraries. There are schools where children come to school in slippers. There are schools where children come to school even without slippers. There are schools where one teacher teaches all the subjects for all the kids. So there are disparities anyway within our system. So yes, even when it comes to technology, you will have to contend with those disparities. But the good thing is this: mobile telephony penetration is very high in this country. In terms of the number of mobile phone users, it exceeds the population of this country. So I think a great many in this country have access to some form of mobile phone. So this technology is an enabler in this case. So that's where it becomes the responsibility of the state to provide as much as possible the infrastructure and an affordability for mobile data and even devices if possible. You will never have a situation where there is equality or parity, but we can choose to minimize it. And somehow I see technology as having the ability to create a level playing field more than most other things, right? So that's my answer to you. Yes, we will have disparities and we have disparities, but the disparity brought about by technology is far less than most of the other constraints that we have if you look at the entire student population of the country.
Absolutely. Thanks for that descriptive answer, Harshana. I think another aspect that we are all very curious about is how the role of the parents have changed due to this new way of educating kids at home. Indivari Gunaratna is asking an interesting question. Let me read it out. As a mother working in the health sector, I too find difficult to engage in providing devices, supporting them to connect in a Zoom class, helping them with upload assignments, teaching difficult areas for them. Apart from my role as a mother-daughter professional, I have to become a full-time teacher. Online teaching is good as long as kids can do their own and proper guidance is provided by teachers. If not, one parent should spare for kids home-based education. That will be a bottleneck in all these education avenues. I want your thoughts on this. That's an interesting question, and I would like to pose it to Malithi.
Well, I think it's a challenge that almost all the parents are facing, because even I personally know with my kid, even with the work that we are doing, sometimes we have to manage many things at the same time. The working people nowadays, when you are at home, it's easy to be with your child, and anyway you would give your entire time, whatever is available, to teach and to support and to help the children grow. But schools nowadays have become a little bit like childcare centers as well, because for parents to go to work, schools are the place where children stay occupied with 7:30 to 1:30, and then many other extracurricular activities, sometimes up until even 6, 7, or otherwise they go to tuition after school. So now when you have to deal with the child throughout the day and you have to go to work after the curfew was lifted, that's when I think you really kind of came to see the problem of how to facilitate and how to continue with the education. Up until that, staying at home and trying to do what the school assigned was not a big issue. So only thing is, I think there are no other options available at the moment, because definitely children cannot come to school. So children are at home. And what the schools are trying to do is to create some engagement to ensure that the children stay on task, and that some interaction with these online platforms they have with the friends and their peers, and some normalcy of the school routine continues. But unfortunately, we also know, because even when we have a virtual classroom, sometimes it's about 25% of the normal classroom that comes to it. Others sometimes record and watch it later, or otherwise get to know the things from the teacher or a friend. So unfortunately, it's not fair for everybody or accessible for everyone in the same way. But we have to make do with whatever we can, and take this as optimistically as possible, and try to support, because we are all doing it for our children. I'm talking about education, so the school educators, parents, everyone wants the best for their child, and in that, everyone is trying to do their part. So unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we need to be able to sacrifice either some time or some effort into finding someone for the child to partake in this, or otherwise you need to teach your child what they are missing out to some
Yep.
extent. There's no other alternative at the moment.
Yeah, I think parents have to play a much committed role especially during this time. So
Also appreciate, we don't get a lot of appreciation. We always hear a lot of the problems these days and a lot of negative criticism. But teachers, if you look at it, teachers and educators, I think since the 17th of April, we have not had a break. We have been doing so many things, learning new skills, things, preparing new things. So all these challenges, I'm sure, I think every teacher, whether it's in the government schools, private, public, whatever it is, everyone has learned so many new things in a very short time. And some of the things we are also still experimenting. So I think we will all improve and develop as it goes, and hopefully speculating on the trend of how other countries have opened the schools. I think before July or so, our country also in phases might start opening the schools, and we would
Right.
love to have kids back face to face to teach.
Absolutely. I think the kids are also looking very forward to that. Nuwan, there's a question directed at you from the audience. He's asking regarding the survey that is conducted about the dissatisfaction of students with the old system. What are your thoughts on new models to improve local teacher trainings to bridge the gap? If you would like to answer it really shortly, because we are running a little bit out of time, so let's keep our answers short.
Okay. I just go really like fast. So one thing is like most of them are like, now most of the time the students are like, they are dissatisfied about the education system. So as about the research says, but this is the thing. Now most of us, we are thinking that learning means something we should go to online and download the stuff, or otherwise we have to take it from textbook. It's not like that. I'll tell you one example. So I think show the video of my sister's younger one. The elder one is like, she's like 12 years old. She's 12 years old. These days she learns how to sew. And then what she did was, now obviously we know that the face mask, we have the mask plus we have a face shield, right? You have to buy two things. So what she did was, she used the sewing machine. She made the mask plus she put a transparent part on top of it to cover the rest of the part of the face. So that means with the mask, everything is coming, and she made it into a product. Now it's on the market. It's available on the market. Now she's like 12 years old. Now she has a business by her own. So that's what we are talking about education.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So that we are talking about, that's what we are talking about education. It's not all about like with the current education, we can't change the governments. We can't change how the government thinks. But as a parent, you have some response. You can do certain things. The second thing about the developing the teachers. One thing is this pandemic situation create a good market for teachers. That means obviously teachers with good skills, they will be able to survive in the education system from hereafter. So which means that obviously we are providing now, actually you can't give a training for teachers. They should be passionate about it. So obviously you can't have another IgniterSpace unless you are not passionate about it. So the same thing for everything. So always we have to find passionate people and we have to take them into the education sector. So I think this pandemic situation open up the gates for bring passionate teachers into the section. So for that, the question I would like to answer, it's not all about teachers. You can also change your child. Don't worry about, don't search for digital devices. There are plenty of things. The world is open for learning. So anything which around you, you can learn from it. Right. I think, yes.
Nuwan, you told about, we can't have another IgniterSpace, for that we need to have another Jehan.
Yes,
that's we only one Jehan in the world, so I think that's so.
that's
Another
I totally agree.
like to put it to Buddhika. So this is from Sifan Zawahir. Children should enjoy what they do. Quoted, it's quoted. So if I tell every adult here, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, all of you must learn analytics using Power BI, quite possibly useful skill for the new normal economy, would all of you enjoy it? If not, why would you expect the children to?
But I think we are thoroughly muddled up with what skills we are teaching our children. They are never going to be thrown into a deep academic content like that. We're talking about basic literacy, basic numeracy, transferable skills that are there in our curriculum. Okay, so in primary school, if the children start enjoying what they do, they will explore on their own. Curiosity will build. That's why I love IgniterSpace, and I know how they do the teaching. They don't go dive deep into the knowledge aspect of it first. They build it up. So children actually want to learn. Now that's what I mean by enjoy learning. It is not about being forced to learn something that you don't have to. As an adult, you have a choice. You can, yes, if you are doing a job that you don't like, it's a completely different story. But we are talking about creating adults who will create knowledge in the future. Gone are the days we have, you have to become a doctor or a lawyer, so that is parents' wishes and dreams coming true through their children. But if children choose what they like to do, if we enable a process where children select what they want to do, they'll thrive a lot better. And this idea of becoming a doctor or a lawyer is the safe, sure way of securing a good life for the rest of your existence is getting far outdated. We have artificial intelligence doing diagnosis, we have robotics doing surgeries, we have AI doing therapy. So we're talking about diversification at a stage where what we can do at elementary and at primary level is to get children to enjoy what they do. So they become creators of knowledge. They don't become slaves of what is already there. They become able to think for themselves, look at a solution, come up with a practical, few options, all in cohabitation with technology, not harming the environment, living with fellow people around them in the society. So that is what I mean. That mindset cannot be instantly changed. So obviously, even the questions that we have from most of our parents are within that mind frame. What do we want for our children? To be absolutely successful, and these are the careers in their minds that the children should pursue.
Yeah.
But if you give them a choice of, really exploring what they're learning, and as I said, it's basic numeracy, basic literacy that builds, skills in children. That's what they need to know how to learn better in their adult life. So yeah. I think I really, if you don't mind, I'd like to take a minute to build on what Nuwan said. We need innovation. We desperately need innovation. And where do we start? And we were talking about a lot of suggestions. And yes, COVID has pushed to, get really, really high proficiency in computers and internet. But where do we start? What do we do? It's not about COVID-19 only anymore. We're talking about a bigger picture. We're talking about education jumping the hurdle of where we are right now. So where do we start? I think if you even get our education system assessed, as opposed to what the rest of the world is doing. Take PISA, what the International Program for Student Assessment on Math, Science and Reading. So that assesses 15-year-olds' ability through math, science and reading to face real life challenges, whether the children who come out of the system. But we don't have that. And we are a part of the OECD. Up to now, we've been a member. But OECD runs this assessment every 3 years, but we've never taken part. So as a community, we can push for these things to happen. So it's not about enjoying something that you don't like to do. It's about creating individuals who will grow up to select something that they would enjoy doing and explore further.
Maybe I'll quickly chuck this question to you as well. We can take it quickly. This is from Nishani Morris. How can children in SLB help to improve their English or ED education? Or the education system to give more importance to it, so our children can be more geared to face the global platform? Basically talking about English education.
Can you repeat that question, Enosh?
Okay, so the question again is, how can children in SL be helped to improve their English or the education system to give more importance to it, so our children can be more geared to face the global platform?
Okay, so we are talking about what we can.
How can it be improved?
Yeah. So basically, again, if we set our standards, we need to know where we're going before we start going there. So if we know these are the skills that our children need to have, again, coming back, I think it's circling now. We need to look at the content. We need to look at how it's delivered. Language is not a seated and just written to learn. It has listening, it has speaking, it has, ability to think and respond. So we still don't have those 4 components assessed at O levels. We're talking about a public exam that is purely assessed on a written sense. So we have a long way to go, but it needs to start at a very, very national policy structured level, because private schools are already making the auditory or the practical part of it, into their curriculum. But majority of the children are in government schools, and they're not getting. So in a sense, we need to look at national policy in terms of what we can change. And it will be subject specific. If you're talking about science, it cannot be based on a book. If it's language, it just cannot be seated in a chair and exchanged. It needs to be looked at what we're teaching and how we're teaching it.
All right. So we are actually down to just 10 minutes. So we are just going to take one more question and then we're going to call it a night. So the question is, there are 4 different types of learners: visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. Now with COVID, we are successfully moving from one type of challenge to another challenge, which is from a reading, writing heavy environment to visual and auditory environment. How exactly can a school address these challenges, and what are your thoughts on these? If maybe Malithi can take on that.
If you don't mind, Jehan, can you please repeat it?
For sure. There are 4 different types of learners: visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. Now with COVID, we are successfully moving from one type of challenge to another challenge, which is from a reading, writing heavy environment to a visual and auditory environment. How can a school address these challenges? I guess it's about the change in environment for a child, moving from the classroom-based education to the online-based education, how a school can properly address this. And if with closing remarks, maybe if you guys can share some thoughts on what is the immediate way forward when it comes to education in terms of Sri Lanka for kids.
I think even in the classrooms, teachers have been aware of the back requirements, and they try to cater, but and there are no set visual learners or set auditory learners. We all learn with a combination of all aspects. Some might be more visual than others, some might be more kinesthetic or auditory than one particular thing, but we do learn from all these areas. So the advantage with this current thing is they get to see more, and nowadays children, they are seeking instant gratification. So they like to see things happen quickly. They want to see and experience things rather than just sitting and listening to things. So therefore they will enjoy the visual aspect, I think, more of this online teaching. But still for all, I think being able to read, write and all is key part of the literacy skills that are expected. So whether they like it or not, it's easier to photocopy all the notes that are coming, paste it in the book and to give. But unless they kind of practice writing, improve those things, that also will be another disadvantage in the long run if they just continue with listening, seeing, and I think not doing much. So even writing and all falls under the doing category.
Yep.
Even in the classrooms, we of course do employ many techniques where children come and present and start the lesson for the topic, and then the teacher moves into kind of broaching the topic and explaining and discussing the things. So I think it depends from teacher to teacher. So you need to be passionate and you need to kind of think and try to facilitate an environment where all the children will be engaged in learning, and that when you see the children enjoying their learning, I think you automatically know that learning is happening. So that whether it's online or whether it's in a real classroom, definitely must be a consideration when we are planning for our lessons.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Malithi, for that. And I think we are almost, we are pretty much almost at closing time. So maybe we'll take just one final question, just stretch it for about 2 minutes because it's too good a panel. So maybe on a closing remarks, probably we'll just quickly take 30 seconds from each. I mean, all of us, I think the educators, teachers, parents, all of them are well intended and they are all doing their best to cross through this situation, this pandemic situation that we have. And I think we've been doing pretty well. And even this discussion and most of what we share is all in the intention to improve and for us to share knowledge. But we can also look at our neighboring countries, maybe the Western world, of what are the things that they have done, and maybe take a few learnings. So maybe from each one of you, some of the things that you all have seen outside, which we can take on, or any things that you also can advise that we can look forward to doing in Sri Lanka. Maybe we can start with Buddhika, then Nuwan, and then Malithi, and then
Thanks, Enosh. We can start by looking at the World Happiness Index. That lists out, currently we are 130 in the list as of recent statistics. That's really, really bad. And then we can look at the Good Country Index. That's another thing where actually the countries are listed out in terms of how their people are contributing towards their economy and how happy people are, content people are. And then we can look at PISA. Like I mentioned before, it is a standardization process where we look at whether what we do in our early years are actually bringing about adults that we need who can face challenges in the society. So before we go anywhere else, we can actually take part in these research engines, and we can see, okay, these are the things that we need to do before we go about taking anything on, because no foreign system would be perfect for us. We need to look at what we can do and can't do and how we can adapt good things to fit in, like Malithi said, into our culture, into our society. But first of all, we need to know what they are. And to do that, I think we need to take part on a global scale and see where we are as an education system. That's the starting point.
Nuwan?
Yeah, I would like to point out like something like, so the earlier question, like it's about like kinetics and auditory learners. So I'll just tell you like one thing we can do. Actually, we have vocational training centers all around the country. The only thing is our vocational training centers are not linked with the school education. If we can link them together, I think we can find the answer for the question that parent had. So then we can link, if you are unable to go for like reading and writing and those skills, obviously you have vocational education. And next thing is the Sri Lanka might find it difficult to fund it. So best thing is most of the country, what they do is they start vocational education, and the products from that vocational education is going to the market. So they build ship, they build like parts of vehicles. Who students they do it, they sell it, they earn money. That money goes to the sustainability of the education. I think that might be a good thing we can add in the future.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nuwan. Malithi?
All in all, I think we do need to look at things in a very positive manner, whatever the positive manner that is possible, and be grateful for the things that we have, because all around us, everything has slowed down a little bit. And this time might never come again sometimes. Now, to spend with the children, to be with the children, and to do more things with the children. So, to whatever the best possible manner, even when we go back to what used to be, I think it's essential that we realize that as parents also we really can support our children more. We do have that ability, and also children also can self-learn. They don't need to be spoon-fed or handheld every single time, but they are capable of doing things on their own and contributing, because ours is a bit of a race. They come to school, then they go to tuition, then they do more things, all related to passing exams. So this skill development and all now is a great time, and we see a lot children are doing the work what we are giving, and they are coming. So we have more productive discussions and all when we have a class where they can contribute more rather than just being active listeners. So we hope that these things will continue and not just go back to the same old way when schools open. And I take this opportunity to really thank all the teachers also, because they are our key asset in being able to do something during this period, and also for the support some parents have given, because they have really taken it on stride and tried to do things sometimes even better than what we do at schools, making so many teaching aids for their child and all. So some are taking it, but unfortunately not everyone has the time, and we do understand that too. So all in all, let's hope that soon that we will learn to live with this pandemic in a better manner, and we'll be able to return to things in a more normal setting, but also take the best out of what we have learned during this period. Thank you very much for having us on this panel.
Thank you, Malithi. Harshana?
Yeah, I also would like to mention that even with the distant or the online teaching platform, it is possible to bring in reading, writing, and even kinesthetic exercises. Speaking about our experience at AIS, we have been having creative writing competitions, poetry, then even PE and general daily physical education regime has been put in. So it's not as if you cannot incorporate those, but you have to be a little bit creative in how you do it, and it can be achieved. Of course, it depends on the commitment and the effort put in by the school and the teachers towards it, but it is possible, right? And as Malithi pointed out, actually you would experience more through this, because the children themselves have time, and they also, more than anything else, have the time to think. So teachers have the time to think, children have the time to think. They have been pulled back a bit from this famous rat race that we are talking of, and those are invariably positive things that will add value to us in the long term. And my closing remark about the effort of the teachers, which Malithi echoed as well, the little bit that I have seen which has been happening in neighboring countries, the input of the teachers have been much less than what it has been in Sri Lanka in general. I mean, if I were to talk it in a general context, most of the time in other countries, what has happened is it's a question of just uploading assignments, or maybe a lesson once a week. But the input from teachers personally have been much less, even when you look at what has been happening in the UK or Australia. So I am actually proud to be in the field of education in Sri Lanka right now. I am extremely proud to be associated with school education right now, because what has been happening in Sri Lanka is, I challenge people, because what has been happening in Sri Lanka and in my school, I'm speaking for myself, but also I'm aware of what has been happening around, even not only in international schools, but state and private schools as well. What has been done has not been achieved so much in other contexts that we are aware of. Yeah. So therefore, I would say that we are really blessed in that sense. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for providing me this opportunity, and I congratulate you for actually opening up this discussion.
Thank you, Harshana. I think it has been an absolutely amazing evening getting all of you on this platform. I'm sorry if we couldn't answer all your questions. I think everybody was very, very excited till the end to throw many questions at this amazing panel. So once again, thank you, Malithi. Thank you, Buddhika. Thank you, Harshana. Thank you, Nuwan. And above all, thank you to Enosh, my amazing co-host for the day. And thank you for ReadMe for partnering up with IgniterSpace to launch this webinar. And tomorrow is an exciting day for us because we are going to be launching our online makerspace classes for the kids to do it at home. So more than 600 kids will be doing innovation activities at home from tomorrow. So fingers crossed. So once again, thanks a lot for joining. And with every event that we conduct with Enosh and ReadMe, there is a tradition that we take a selfie. But because it's a webinar, some would think that we would not do it. But I think Enosh, you have a way of doing that, right?
So this is pretty much going to be like a quick screenshot